to the Dear Younger Self webinar. I'm your host, Lorraine Porto, COO over here at Retainers for Life. And today I am truly thrilled to have Dr. Chris Cetta, who's joining us. Now, Dr. Cetta is not only a respected practicing orthodontist, he's also the host of that popular Illuminate Orthodontic podcast. And his podcast has become that go-to source for orthodontists who are looking maybe to stay ahead of the curve. And it really features those thought-provoking discussions on latest trends and real world challenges in that field. So as someone who has built a platform to inspire and educate others, Dr. Cetta is truly the perfect guest for this Dear Younger Self webinar. And today we're asking him the big question. If you could go back in time, what words of wisdom would you give your younger self? So I'm excited to hear the insights that he's going to share with us today. Let's get started. Thank you so much for taking time at your lunch to join me today. I so incredibly appreciate it. And I know that you're going to be amazing because you have quite the career. Everybody knows you. I just introduced you. So again, welcome, Dr. Chris Cetta. And let's just get started. So strap us, we're in the DeLorean and we're going to go back to the
Back in
future.
time. Yeah.
But so tell me, let's start. You've graduated college. What year was that?
That was 2001. It feels like a long time ago
2001.
now.
You're a
Yeah.
young buck, really,
Oh, thank you. I'll take
in
that.
my eyes. But it's 2001. What's ahead of you? Tell me what does your world look like?
Oh, geez. 2001. So yeah, I graduated from Wake Forest University. At the time, I was headed back to New Jersey to go to dental school. And I love the concept of this series of looking back. And certainly I've learned a lot throughout my career. I'm still learning. I do not consider myself an expert, but at the same time, I do love reflecting. I love learning. So I think one of the big things that I've learned, Lorraine, is don't overthink things. I am such an overthinker, and I've gotten a lot better with it. I'm still guilty, but I am definitely the type that instead of ready, fire, aim, I am aim, 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 maybe ready. Let's go back to aiming before I fire on things.
Mhm,
And I think having gone into orthodontics, we have to make so many decisions throughout the day, whether it's chairside with patients, making adjustments, if it's on the admin side, right? So I have gotten a lot better about it.
mhm.
Now it only takes me 10 minutes at a restaurant to pick out what I want to eat. Just kidding.
You're
But
one of those guys.
I think a lot of times, especially when we're younger, we tend to look at these big decisions and get that sort of paralysis by analysis, right?
Mhm, mhm,
Don't get me wrong. There's certain decisions that you do really want to think about. For example, if you're picking a partner, getting married, right?
mhm.
That's when you want to think, yeah, of course we can go back on that, but that's a big decision. But a lot of times with decisions, especially with your career, it does make sense to, jump in. You're going to land on your feet. Believe in yourself.
Mhm,
Don't get hung up on making a decision. So
mhm.
that's my first nugget for you today.
So I'm going to put you on the spot.
Please.
So it's now where you've just opened your practice. Give me an idea of what that analysis was. Was there something that you just couldn't sleep at night, right? You were sort of analyzing it over and over again before you actually press the button. Was there something specific that sort of led that you had an experience and sort of throughout the years you realized you were repeating it? Would you say that that would be a fair statement?
It's funny because I was trying to think of a specific example, and I think I'm just the personality type that
Mm,
I tend to be an overthinker. And that there's probably quite a few orthodontists that fit into that category, I
yeah.
would imagine.
Hmm.
So I don't know if there was any one particular thing. Now, to be clear, I don't own my own practice, so I am an associate. I was in New Jersey and here in Florida. But when I actually went into dental school, and this is going to lead me into my next point soon. I did not get into ortho the first time around. So I
Oh,
actually did a general practice residency, was actually enjoying general dentistry at the time, so went into practicing dentistry. And just, for example, the decision of should I stick with general dentistry? Should I go back to school? For me, that was something that I overthanked probably for like 3 years. I could have made a
yeah,
quicker
yeah.
decision.
But
So,
it's good that you've learned this about you, right?
right.
And it's okay to reflect and say, I've had these experiences. There's maybe a better way for me to move this forward. And
Right.
self-reflection is so incredibly important, right? Especially when we're young and
For
afraid
sure.
of making failures, right?
I definitely have gotten better, and I also recognize it in myself. So I get to a point
Mm.
where I sort of realize maybe I'm overthinking. I'll ask other people, like, "Hey, do you think I'm just overthinking this decision? Should we just go with an option here?"
Right. I mean, absolutely. I think that's great advice. And I think many young people think they're supposed to be perfect and they're supposed to
Mhm.
know everything. They're out of school and they're on a high and they're excited about starting their career, which I think leads you into like a really great next point, which was you talked about in the email that you sent me was like embracing your failures. So tell me a little bit about that.
Perfect transition, Lorraine. Great podcast host, by the way. Yeah, very well done. So as I alluded to before, after dental school, I did apply to ortho, did not get it in the first time around. And that was just really devastating for me because
Mm,
I had always planned on going into orthodontics. And sometimes I think that we maybe, I don't know, just when we encounter something that doesn't go exactly our way, we just tend to get very down on ourselves.
mm,
And failure is completely normal. I mean, if you look at any super successful people, whether athletes, entrepreneurs, they have failed multiple times in their life. But the big message I have for my younger self is you just have to learn from those failures. Don't get down. Failure is normal. I'll give you an example in terms of the product that we came out with, the precision aligner buttons.
mhm.
Once we developed that product, we had to pitch that to a number of companies. And instead, you hear the word no very often when you're pitching to companies.
Mhm.
But I see you laughing, so you probably know a little
Yes,
bit
I
about this,
live this
right?
world. Yes.
What you really have to do is just learn when you get a no, well, learn to ask why, right?
Mhm.
And what can you learn from this situation? So I think that's definitely something I've learned over time. My younger self, I think I would get quite down if things didn't quite go my way or if I quote unquote failed. But you have to learn to just pick yourself back up and keep going.
I mean, absolutely. And again, those 2 points go very good side by side, which is,
Hmm.
being allowing yourself the being human and not being perfect. And I think that comes hand in hand with being an orthodontist, is that perfection is a part of their world, right?
Yes,
A lot of the orthodontists that I've interviewed in this series before this talks about the difference between what they want out of treatment versus what the patient sees, right? And what the patient wants out of
yes,
treatment. So, allowing our younger generation to be human, right? And this is the power I think that we have as older adults. I'm way older than you are, but as older adults, is that it's okay to say, that didn't work, but let's look at what we could have done to be able to move forward in life, having not repeating the same mistake over and over again. So I think those
absolutely.
good words of wisdom. Do you feel like you would have slept better at night had you known that moving just into your career?
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think in the beginning that just it did help me. I think I was able to get a little more resilient in that sense
yeah,
from embracing failure. But it's not again, it's something I feel like we all go through. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. Whether it's a
absolutely.
maybe a professional situation or personal too, maybe a
Mhm.
relationship didn't work out the way you intended. And that's okay. We're all moving forward. We're pivoting, right?
Right.
Um, but to
And
your
getting
point,
better
and
because
getting better.
we learned something moving forward. We just had a really great entrepreneurs meeting, and
And I'm sad I missed it.
Yeah, and I wish you had been there. And as I mentioned to you before, I really love sort of this huge out of the box thinking. It's a large reason why I took this role to begin with. But there was a young man that was there, and I want to call him out, and I'm forgetting his full name, but his first name was Juan, and he got up on stage and he froze. And of course, all of the parents in the auditorium just really felt for him and cheered him on.
Mm.
But you could consider that a failure. You could, or
Sure.
you could consider that as step number one of learning and facing a fear and, no, analysis by paralysis, just get up and do it, right?
Right.
And so I just couldn't help this morning, but write a note, made sure that all of the folks over at Entrepreneurs know that I admire any company that can lift a young man up. He's 25 years old, and support him into a career that they can see very clearly he's going to be amazing. So, again, some people view them as fails, but at the end of the day, what an incredible learning experience that was for him.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story. I'm sorry I wasn't on the cruise,
I
but
know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it does sound like a wonderful thing how the audience there really did support him.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. But
Uh,
you have really had not necessarily a normal journey as an orthodontist because obviously you weren't there with the Relapse band this time, but you also play in a band called Relapse, and you have your podcast, which is called Illuminate
mhm.
Orthodontics Podcast, right? I got that right, didn't I?
You got it. Yeah.
Okay. And so not so why? Where did that come from? That's a really interesting story.
The podcast we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as so Relapse, yes, I was an original member of Relapse, original bass player.
Yeah.
I am no longer in the band, but they are way, way better without me. That is for sure.
You
And
were a
Dr.
bass player?
She took
Lead
over
bass?
on the bass, and she is
Yeah.
amazing. I love
Yeah.
her so much. She is wonderful.
Yeah.
But yes, I had some great years with Relapse. I think it was like 2 or 3 years I was in the band. And the whole group, I mean, just what an incredible group of
Yeah.
people. So.
Yeah.
As far as the podcast, that started in 2020 around COVID. And it really
Oh.
just started with me being super curious. I
Mhm.
had come out with a product at the time. I was curious how other people came out with products, such as Dr. Alfred Griffin from Lightforce, Brandon Owen with KLON,
Mm.
Hoff with Grin, and others. And just wanted to have a conversation with people like you. I'm super curious about stories and love to
Yeah.
hear how people got to where they are.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a large part of my podcast is just storytelling and that curiosity element.
In one of your points that you made, you said like invest in yourself. Was this something that you would have said that you were investing in something that you were wanting to be a part of or you wanted to explore? So tell me more about that.
Sure. Yeah. As far as one of my points for my younger self here, and I think this could be helpful for a lot of young doctors to hear, and this is whether you own your practice or maybe you're working for an OSO and you're an associate, right?
Mm, mhm.
But it's so important to invest in yourself professionally, right? So I have always done a lot of continuing education, conferences. I'm always learning, whether it's about orthodontics or something else. I think that's really important.
Mm,
And then also just sort of building your own personal brand. And I think that's sort of a side thing that came out of my podcast. That wasn't
yeah.
really the intention of starting it. But I have been able to develop a sort of a brand and a following from that podcast.
Mhm.
And certainly, I think people that are business owners are probably doing that naturally. But even
Mhm.
if you don't have your own orthodontic practice, it's so important to really start doing that from the beginning.
Very interesting. It's a large part of what we do on the corporate side, of course, is build brands, right?
Mhm.
And one of the things, I have a team of 10 women. So it's 10 women building this company. And what I advise them all to do is to build your own personal brand. So I couldn't agree with you more. And it's all about just being you. You're allowed to be you, and you're allowed to explore topics that are of interest to you. and make sure the world knows about that. Because again, we're talking to our younger self. It's all about opening up possibilities and futures and paths that perhaps would never have been open to you. Would you say that your podcast has opened up a path that perhaps you'd never even thought about before?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it certainly opened up a lot of connections within the industry.
Hmm.
For example, I mean, really, I think probably through the podcast helped me become an advisory board member at OrthoTown and the JCO. Um,
Nice.
had it
Yeah.
not been for the podcast, yes, I've written a couple articles for each of them, but I do think that probably helped considerably. So.
Hmm.
Sometimes we don't always know what the master plan is, but
Yeah.
certainly getting the podcast out there in the universe has been a blessing for me.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes do you look back and you say, if I had have told my younger self that this is where I would be today, would you have believed it?
Oh, definitely not. Right. Uh, I joke. I mean, I never thought I'd be a podcaster. Podcasting wasn't even a thing 5 years ago, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I never had any aspirations to be in radio or television for that matter,
Right.
and still don't think I'm necessarily good at it, though other people seem to think I do. So the whole idea of interviewing, I mean, you seem
Yes.
very natural at it. But that was not something that I had ever gone to school for, certainly, or really learned about.
Yeah, yeah. But isn't it amazing now that we do have these types of things, right? One good thing that came out of COVID, right? Because at the end of the day, up until that time, we were all just networking at the conventions or
Mhm.
at maybe your study club, right? And so we really didn't have the ability to share the knowledge that we have or network so well without until this came along. So I really believe that this has been a really great time to connect with other people in your world that perhaps are having a problem, need a shoulder, give me your wing, I need guidance. We really do have a perfect opportunity to make sure that we're bringing our industry together as a collaboration and that
Right.
we're all talking to each other because that's huge for where we're going.
Oh, for sure, right? And whether that's through Facebook groups, social media,
Yeah.
podcasts, virtual events, there are some blessings that came out of COVID for sure. And just thinking back to the beginning of my orthodontic career, you're right. I mean, it was mostly just like local
Yeah.
meetings, local study clubs, and the AAO or a couple other big meetings a year, but really weren't that many.
Yeah.
So things have definitely
Absolutely.
changed, that's for sure.
Well, thank you. At the end of the day, I really hope that, there's going to be some kid as I'm older, so I get to call all these
Rain,
people
you're not
kids,
old. Come
right?
on. Same.
All of these kids coming out of school, and just starting out on their journey. And we hope that I'm sure 100% that this information is great for them to start moving into their careers and moving forward. So thank you. Much
Lorraine, thank you so
appreciated.
much for having me. An honor. And I'm definitely going to keep up with this series. I think it's a fantastic
Thank
concept.
you.
And you're a wonderful host and so easy to talk to. So thank you
Thank
so much for
you.
having me
Much
today.
appreciated.
Absolutely.